I didn't hide money to be cruel. I hid it to keep my daughter safe. Then my fiancé found it and said, "What about me?" And the worst part is, I still loved him when he said it. I said to Ian, "Why are you opening my mail?" He tapped the paper and said, "So this is what we're doing now? You're hiding money from me." I just stood there. The apartment was quiet because my daughter, Sophie, was at a friend's house finishing a school project. There were no cartoons playing. Just him. Just me. I said, "That's not yours." He laughed once, sharp and ugly. "We're getting married." I know. So how is this not my business? I put the groceries down because my fingers had gone numb. The milk tipped sideways and I fixed it because I needed something normal to do. Something small. Something that didn't feel like my whole life had just been cracked open by a man who couldn't even apologize for touching what wasn't his. He said, "You have almost $260,000 and you were just going to let me walk into this marriage blind?" I said, "I wasn't letting you walk into anything blind. That money existed before you." His face changed when I said that. Not dramatically. He didn't scream. He didn't slam his fist on the table. He just went still and his eyes got colder. Before me, he repeated, "Yes. So that's how you see it? That's how it is." For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he pushed the statement closer to me like it was evidence in a trial. "Explain it." I should have told him to leave right then. I know that now. He had opened my mail. He had invaded my privacy. He was sitting at my kitchen table demanding answers about money he had no right to touch. But I was engaged to him. I had said yes to marrying him. I had let my daughter start imagining him in our future. So instead of telling him to get out, I tried to explain. I told him the money came from a scratch ticket I bought years before. I told him it wasn't millions, and it wasn't some secret luxury fund. I had used part of it to clear debt, put part of it away for Sophie, invested some, and kept the rest as emergency security. He stared at me like every sentence made him more offended. I said, "I didn't tell many people because money changes the way people look at you." He said, "So you assumed I was one of those people?" No. I was being careful. With me. With everyone. He leaned back and shook his head. "That's convenient." I hated that word. Convenient. Like caution was manipulation. Like surviving alone with a child had made me sneaky instead of careful. Before Ian, my life had been small, but it was mine. I had Sophie young, with a man named Leo who liked being called a father more than he liked being one. He wasn't evil. He wasn't even dramatic enough to hate. He was just absent in that lazy, casual way some people are. He sent birthday money late, posted about my beautiful daughter online twice a year, and acted like showing up to one school event every few years made him a hero. So it was me and Sophie in a little apartment in Tucson. Secondhand furniture. A kitchen table with one wobbly leg. A couch that dipped in the middle. Grocery lists written on the backs of old envelopes. I learned which stores marked down meat on Thursdays. I learned how to stretch one tank of gas until payday. I learned how to smile at Sophie when I was scared, because kids can smell fear even when they don't understand bills. Then one afternoon, she asked for a red slushie from the gas station after a dentist appointment. I bought it because she had been brave, and while we were there, I bought a scratch ticket with the change from my wallet. I didn't think anything of it. I scratched it in the car while Sophie was buckling her seatbelt. When I realized what I was seeing, I thought I had made a mistake. My hands started shaking so badly I had to lock the doors and breathe through my nose. Sophie kept asking, "Mom, what happened?" And I just kept saying, "Nothing, baby. I'm okay." After taxes and all the boring adult parts nobody talks about, it came out to a little under $260,000. Not enough to live forever. Enough to breathe. Enough to protect Sophie if something happened to me. Enough to give her choices I never had. Enough that I could stop lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering whether one broken car part would collapse our whole life. I told my mom, Olive. I told my best friend, Nora. Then my mom introduced me to Carl, a financial advisor she trusted, and for once in my life I did not let panic make decisions for me. I didn't quit working. I didn't buy a giant house. I didn't show up anywhere in designer clothes. I paid off my car. I made Sophie's future fund real. I kept emergency money. I invested carefully. Then I went back to making lunches, washing school uniforms, and cutting coupons because money disappears fast when people start treating it like magic. A year later, I met Ian. He was charming in a calm, grown-up way. Not flashy. Not loud. He remembered little things. If I mentioned Sophie had a spelling test, he asked how it went. If I said I hated driving at night, he offered to pick up takeout. He didn't try to force himself into a dad role, and that actually made me trust him more. He let Sophie warm up to him slowly. At first, she called him your friend Ian. Then it became just Ian. Then one evening, when he fixed a loose drawer in the kitchen, she whispered to me, "He's kind of useful." I laughed about that for days. Ian came to a few of her school events. He played card games with her. He didn't act annoyed when she talked too long about things he probably didn't understand. I started to think maybe I had finally found a man who didn't make my life heavier. When he proposed, I cried before I said yes. Not because the ring was huge. It wasn't. Not because he made a scene. He didn't. He proposed at home after dinner while Sophie was pretending not to spy from the hallway. It felt simple. Safe. Real. That was what made it hurt later. We planned a small wedding outside Tucson. Nothing expensive. A backyard venue, a casual dinner, close friends and family. Ian sometimes pushed for nicer things, but I always pulled us back. We don't need to go into debt for one day, I told him. He used to smile and say, "You're so careful it's almost annoying." I thought he meant responsible. I thought he liked that about me. Now I think he liked it when he thought careful meant broke. Because after the bank statement, everything shifted. At first, Ian said he was hurt. He said he felt embarrassed that he had talked about budgets and bills while I had money. He said his divorce had made him sensitive about secrets. I tried to listen. I really did. I said, "I understand why you feel surprised. I should have told you before the wedding." He said, "Before the wedding? Hazel, you should have told me before I proposed." That stung. I said, "Maybe. But you also opened my mail." He waved that away like it was nothing. That's not the point. But it was the point. It was one of the points. Then the conversation turned. It stopped being about trust and started becoming a list of things the money could fix. His truck loan had a high interest rate. Paying it off would save money for us. We could buy a house sooner. Sophie could have a yard. He could have a home office. We could host holidays. We could take a proper honeymoon because, according to him, after everything we've both been through, we deserve something beautiful. Every idea sounded reasonable if you only heard the first half. That was what scared me. Because yes, I wanted Sophie to have a yard. Yes, I wanted a safer neighborhood. Yes, I wanted a home where the upstairs neighbor didn't vacuum at midnight and the bathroom fan didn't sound like it was dying. But the money had a purpose. It was not a wishing well. When I said that, Ian got quiet. Then he said, "So Sophie gets everything and I get what? Whatever is left." I felt something in me go cold. I said, "Don't say it like that." He shrugged, but his face was tight. "That's how it feels. She's my child. And I'm supposed to be her husband. Those are not the same thing." He stared at me like I had slapped him. Then he said the sentence I still can't forget. "So I'm marrying into leftovers." The room changed. I don't know how else to explain it. 1 minute, we were arguing about money. The next, I was looking at a man who had just called my daughter's protected future his leftovers. He must have seen my face because he immediately tried to fix it. I didn't mean it like that. I said nothing. I'm upset. I'm trying to explain how excluded I feel. Still nothing. I love Sophie. You know I love her. I wanted to believe him. That was the hardest part. I wanted to grab any explanation that let me keep the man I thought I knew. But the words stayed there. Leftovers. For the next few days, Ian became almost too sweet. He brought coffee. He sent long texts about wanting to be a team. He said he loved me. He said he loved Sophie. He said money made him panic because of his past. He said he had reacted badly and hated himself for it. Then, before I could fully breathe again, he started sending house listings. At first, they were modest. Then they got bigger. 4 bedrooms. 3 bathrooms. Better school districts. More expensive neighborhoods. He would write, "Imagine Sophie having her own playroom." Then, the garage would be perfect for my tools. Then, my mom would finally have space to stay when she visits. Then, if we put enough down, the monthly payment wouldn't even be that bad. Our family money. He used softer words after the fight, but the direction didn't change. When I told Nora, she didn't say leave him right away. That's why I trust her. She asked questions first. Did he apologize for opening the mail? I paused. She noticed. He apologized for reacting badly, I said. That's not the same thing. I hated that she was right. Then she asked, if Sophie didn't exist, would you feel differently? I thought about it. Maybe I would have been more flexible. Maybe I would have used some of the money for a house with him. Maybe I would have convinced myself that love meant sharing everything. But Sophie did exist. And every dollar I had set aside for her represented every night I had cried quietly in the shower so she wouldn't hear me. Every shift I worked tired. Every bill I paid late but paid anyway. Every time I said no to something I wanted because she needed something more. That money was not just money. It was proof that I had dragged us to safety. Ian didn't see that. Or maybe he did, and he still wanted a key. The next fight happened over a prenup. I brought it up because I thought it was the adult thing to do. I told him if we were getting married, we should both protect what we had before the marriage and be clear about what would be shared after. Ian looked at me like I had spit on the ring. A prenup, he said. Yes. So you're planning the divorce before we even get married? No. I'm being responsible. You mean you're protecting yourself from me? I'm protecting Sophie. His jaw tightened. You keep saying that like I'm a threat to her. I didn't answer quickly enough. That was enough. He stood up and said, wow. Ian. No, I get it. I'm good enough to help raise her. Good enough to sit at school concerts. Good enough to be there when she needs something. But when it comes to trust, I'm some random man trying to rob you. That is not what I said. It's what you think. I wanted to deny it, but the truth was messier. I didn't think Ian was trying to rob me. Not exactly. I didn't think he woke up one day and planned to take from my daughter. But I did think he saw my money and immediately started making room for himself inside it. I did think he felt entitled to something he had not built. I did think he was more offended by not being included than he was ashamed of opening my mail. And I didn't know how to marry that. Then he told his family. I found out because his brother, Matt, called me. Not texted. Called. I almost didn't answer because Matt and I were never close. He was friendly at barbecues, the kind of guy who said family is everything, while letting other people clean up around him. But I answered because I thought maybe something had happened. He said, I'm just going to be honest. Ian is crushed. I closed my eyes. He shouldn't have told you about this, I said. He needed someone to talk to. That was private. So it was hiding money from your fiancé. There it was. I said I didn't hide money from him. I kept premarital assets private until we were legally and financially planning the marriage. Matt laughed. That sounds like something a lawyer says. It sounds like something a single mother says. He went quiet for half a second, then said, look, I'm not attacking you. But marriage means building together. You can't walk into it with one foot out the door. I said, building together doesn't mean handing him access to my daughter's future. He sighed like I was being difficult. Nobody is asking you to hand him anything. But they were. They just didn't like the words. A day later, Ian's mother, Vera, invited me to lunch. I knew it was a setup, but I went anyway because a part of me still wanted to fix things. Or maybe I wanted proof that I wasn't being unfair. We met at a small family restaurant she loved. She hugged me too tightly when I arrived, like she was already forgiving me for something. For the first 10 minutes, she talked about the weather, the wedding flowers, how beautiful Sophie looked in the dress we had picked for her. Then she folded her hands on the table and said, Ian told me you two are struggling. I said, he told you about my money. She gave me a sad look. Honey, secrets hurt men like Ian. I almost laughed because it sounded so rehearsed. I said, opening my mail hurt me. She tilted her head. I'm not saying he handled it perfectly. Nobody was. That was the funny thing. Every person defending him admitted he did something wrong, then immediately stepped around it. Vera said, he went through a painful divorce. Trust is hard for him. Trust is hard for me too. I understand that. But she didn't. I could tell by the way she said it, gently, like I was a child clutching a toy. She said, when you marry someone, you can't keep yours and mine. It becomes ours. I said, would you tell Ian to use money he had before me to pay off my ex's debt? Her mouth tightened. That's different. Why? Because you have a child. That's exactly why it's not different. She looked away. Then she said, I just hope you don't punish Ian for wanting to feel secure. I stared at her. The waitress came by and asked if we needed anything else. Vera smiled and asked for more iced tea. I said I was fine, even though my stomach felt like it had folded in on itself. Because that was when I understood something. They were all talking about Ian's security. Nobody was talking about Sophie's. Not really. They used her name when it helped them. A yard for Sophie. A better school for Sophie. A bigger house for Sophie. But when it came to the money actually staying protected for her, suddenly I was cold. Damaged. Fearful. Unfair. That night, Ian came over with flowers. I almost didn't let him in. Sophie was in her room, and I told him we could talk quietly. He looked tired. Handsome in that worn-down way that used to make me want to comfort him. He put the flowers on the counter and said, I hate what this is doing to us. I said, then stop telling your family our private business. His face tightened. I needed support. You made me look like some greedy liar. You made me feel like a stranger. We were back in it again. Round and round. He said he didn't want my money. Then he explained why paying off his truck made sense. He said he loved Sophie. Then he questioned whether her fund needed to be that large. He said he respected my independence. Then he said separate accounts made marriage feel fake. Every argument wore a nicer coat, but underneath, it was the same body. He wanted access. I wanted boundaries. The final straw came 2 weeks later. Sophie was at the kitchen table working on a poster for school. She had markers spread everywhere and glue on her sleeve. Ian came over while I was helping her cut out letters. He acted normal at first. He asked Sophie about her project, complimented her handwriting, told her the purple marker was a bold, creative choice, which made her giggle. For a second, I saw the old Ian again. That was what made what happened later feel even worse. After Sophie went to bed, Ian sat across from me at the same kitchen table where he had opened the statement. I noticed that immediately. I think he did too. He said, I've been thinking. My chest tightened. I don't think we should move forward with the wedding unless we fix this first. I said, I agree. For 1 second, he looked relieved. Then I said, we need counseling, a prenup, and clear financial boundaries. His face closed. That's not what I mean. I waited. He took a breath like he was about to say something generous. I mean, if we're getting married, we need to actually be married. No separate accounts except personal spending. No secret funds. No acting like Sophie is only your responsibility and I'm just some visitor. I said, Sophie is my responsibility. He leaned forward. And if I marry you, I'm taking responsibility too. Emotionally, yes. Day-to-day, yes. But you don't get control over money set aside for her before you were in her life. I'm not asking for control. You want to say? I should have a say if I'm helping raise her. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I asked, do you want to help raise my daughter, or do you want to vote on her money? He went silent. That silence answered more than I wanted it to. Then he said, very quietly, this is why men leave women like you. I felt the air leave my body. He kept going. You make a man feel like he has all the responsibility and none of the authority. Maybe Leo figured that out before I did. I don't remember standing up. I only remember my hand going to the ring. I slid it off slowly. My fingers were shaking, but my voice wasn't. I put it on the table between us. Ian stared at it. What are you doing? He asked. I'm ending this. His expression broke for half a second, then hardened. Over money. No, I said. Over what you became when you found it. He stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. You're proving my point. No. I'm protecting my daughter. He laughed bitterly. From me? Yes. The word came out before I could soften it. He looked like I had hit him. Maybe I had. But it was true. Maybe not from violence. Not from some dramatic danger. But from entitlement. From resentment. From a man who could sit in my home, eat at my table, accept my daughter's trust, and still call her future his leftovers. He said, Sophie is going to grow up thinking no man is good enough because her mother is bitter and paranoid. I said, get out. He waited like I might take it back. I didn't. He grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned and said, you'll regret choosing money over a family. After he was gone, I locked the door. Then I leaned against it and slid down onto the floor. I didn't sob loudly. I couldn't. Sophie was asleep. I pressed my hand over my mouth until my throat hurt. I cried like I had to hide from my own grief. Because I did love him. That is the part people don't understand when they tell you leaving should feel empowering. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it feels like cutting off a hand because it's holding poison. The next morning, Sophie noticed the flowers were gone. She asked, is Ian coming over tonight? I said, no, baby. She looked at me carefully. Kids always know when the air is different. Did you fight? I sat beside her on the couch. We decided we're not getting married. Her face crumpled a little. Because of me? That almost destroyed me. I pulled her into me so fast she made a little surprised sound. No, never because of you. Adults sometimes realize they are not right for each other. She was quiet against my chest. Then she asked, are we still okay? I kissed the top of her head and said, yes. We are still okay. I needed that to be true, so I made it true. The breakup did not stay private. Ian texted apologies, then accusations, then apologies again. He said he was sorry for the leftovers comment, but insisted I had pushed him there. He said he loved me but couldn't marry someone who didn't trust him. He said I had humiliated him by giving the ring back. He said I was making a mistake. Matt messaged me that Ian was devastated and that I had let fear win. Vera left a voicemail saying marriage required faith and I had broken her son's heart over a bank balance. I deleted it after the first listen. Some mutual friends were more careful, but not much better. One said, I get your side, but you should have told him sooner. Another said, opening your mail was wrong, but hiding that much money is kind of a big deal. One even asked if I was sure I didn't self-sabotage because I was scared to be happy. Maybe that last one hurt because part of me had wondered the same thing. So I asked myself the question honestly. Had I hidden the money because I didn't trust Ian? At first, no. I hid it because I didn't trust what money does to people. But after he found it, after he opened my mail, after he told his family, after his apologies kept circling back to what the money could do for him, I stopped trusting him. And I think that difference matters. I canceled the venue. I lost part of the deposit. I returned what could be returned. Sophie's little dress stayed in the closet for a while because I couldn't look at it without feeling sick. Nora came over one night with takeout and sat on the floor while I sorted through wedding stuff. She didn't say, I told you so. She just picked up a stack of invitation samples and said, these are ugly anyway. I laughed so suddenly I cried. My mom was quieter about it. She came over the next weekend, looked around my apartment, and started folding laundry like she had been born doing it. After a while, she said, you know, safety can look boring to people who never had to fight for it. I said, I still feel guilty. She nodded. Of course you do. I loved him. I know. What if I should have told him earlier? She folded one of Sophie's shirts and set it in the basket. Maybe you should have. But a better man would have been hurt and still respected the boundary. That sentence stayed with me. Because yes, maybe I should have disclosed the money before accepting the proposal. I can admit that. Marriage is serious. Money matters. I'm not pretending I handled every part perfectly. But I also think finding out your fiancé has savings should not turn you into someone who opens her life like a drawer and starts deciding what belongs where. A better man might have said, I wish you told me, but I understand why you were careful. A better man might have asked, how do we protect your daughter and still build our future? A better man would have apologized for opening the envelope before demanding anything inside it. Ian didn't do that. He saw a number and started planning. That is the part one keep returning to when I miss him. And I do miss him. I miss the man who made Sophie laugh over bad card tricks. I miss the man who once drove across town because I mentioned the heater was making a weird sound. I miss the man who held my hand in the grocery store and made me feel, for once, like I wasn't carrying everything alone. But I don't miss the man at the table with my statement. I don't miss the way he looked at my daughter's future like it was an unfair advantage he had been denied. A few weeks after the breakup, Leo suddenly reached out more than usual. I'm not stupid. Someone had talked. I don't know who, and honestly, I don't care anymore. He sent a long message about wanting to be more involved and asked if we could revisit financial arrangements for Sophie. I stared at the message for a long time, then sent back, if you want to be more involved, start by showing up consistently. Any financial questions can go through the proper channels. He didn't reply for 2 days. Then he asked what Sophie wanted for her birthday. That was the karma, I guess. Not dramatic. Not satisfying in a movie way. Just one more man realizing there might be something to gain, and me finally being too tired to play polite. So I tightened everything. I met with Carl again. I updated paperwork. I made sure Sophie's fund was protected. I changed account mailing preferences. I got a lockbox. I checked beneficiaries. I did all the boring things that make people roll their eyes until life turns ugly and boring becomes protection. And then I made pancakes. That sounds stupid, but it mattered. The first Saturday after everything settled, Sophie asked if we could have pancakes like we used to before wedding planning took over our weekends. So we did. I burned the first batch because I always do. She teased me and said, you should be banned from circles. I said, pancakes are not circles. They're emotional support blobs. She laughed with syrup on her chin. The apartment smelled like butter. Sun came through the blinds in thin lines across the floor. The laundry was piled on the chair. The sink had dishes in it. Nothing looked impressive. Nothing looked like the life Ian kept trying to sell me with those house listings. But it felt safe. For the first time in weeks, I looked around and didn't see what we lacked. I saw what I had protected. A small home where my daughter didn't have to hear a man question whether her future was too much. A bank account that was still intact. A life that might not impress anyone, but didn't require me to hand over the keys to someone who thought love meant access. Ian tried one more time. He sent a message saying he wanted to talk in person. He said he had been angry and scared. He said he missed us. He said he would sign a prenup if that was what it took, but he also said he hoped one day I would stop seeing him as the enemy. That was the line that told me not to answer. Because I didn't need him to be the enemy. I needed him to understand why I had boundaries. And he still thought the boundary was the insult. So I didn't reply. I put the ring in a small box at the back of my closet. I might sell it someday or give it back if he asks through the right channel. I don't know. Right now, I just don't want it near me. Sophie is okay. She asks about him sometimes, less now than before. I answer gently. I don't poison her against him. He was kind to her in ways that were real, even if the ending revealed things I wish I had seen earlier. That is the uncomfortable truth. People are not always fake just because they disappoint you. Sometimes the love was real, but so was the entitlement. Sometimes someone can care about your child and still resent what you protect for her. Sometimes the red flag isn't a scream or a broken plate. Sometimes it's a man calmly saying, "What about me?" while pointing at the only safety net your child has. I don't feel victorious. I feel sad, relieved, embarrassed, stronger in a way I didn't ask to be. I still have moments where I wonder if I should have told him sooner, if I created the secrecy that poisoned us. Then I remember his face at that table. I remember him skipping past the open mail and going straight to the number. I remember the house listings, the truck loan, the way everyone suddenly had opinions about money they had not earned, saved, or sacrificed for. And I remember Sophie asking if we were still okay. That is the only question that mattered. We are. Not perfect. Not fancy. Not living in a 4-bedroom house with a guest room for someone else's mother. But okay. The money is still where it belongs. The wedding is gone. The man I loved is gone too, or maybe the version I loved never had to compete with the version who felt entitled. Either way, I chose the future I could live with. I chose the little girl asleep down the hall. I chose the safety I built when nobody was coming to save us. So now I'm sitting here in my quiet apartment in Tucson, with a canceled wedding, a hidden ring, a protected account, and a heart that still hurts even though I know I did the right thing. But I keep wondering, was I wrong for keeping the money private until we were engaged, or did my fiancé prove exactly why I had to protect it in the first place?